On our journey up the Itchen, we're going to stop at a few places like this that have got a really close relationship with the river. Now, what's the name of where this has been built? It's called the White Swan. It's on the floodplain. Yep. It's right on the border, on the bank of the river, isn't it? Now, why do you think a pub would be built on the view? Yeah, it's pretty, isn't it? So obviously this is a nice place. It's a good spot, a nice spot.
River and grass and trees.
There's also quite a major road that runs, a relatively major road that runs next to it. So it's got the transport links. So there's a reason why this was built. But it's also slightly illogical because what happens? It floods. It floods quite frequently. And actually, this is...
Is that the floodplain?
Yeah, have a guess how high above the water level do you think
5 metres.
How many?
5 metres.
Then the pub compared to the river level.
No.
So, we'll talk about those in a second. Not even a metre, less than a metre. We're talking maybe 50 centimetres above the normal flow. So this is really low lying, and there's some quite dramatic pictures where this whole car park is underneath maybe that level of water. So it was 2014 that this pub had some of the worst flooding, and it flooded 8 times in 1 year. And it came to the 8th time, and basically they'd lost such a considerable income because the pub had to close. It was flooded, so all of the downstairs was damaged. Now, what do you think? The pub's owned by a brewery. If you were the owners, what would you do?
Shut the pub.
Shut it and give up, wouldn't you? Yeah, 8 times in 1 year. Now, this pub has a history. There's pictures going back hundreds of years of it flooding. So it was obviously a slightly bad idea. Now, what the brewery did instead is they invested in some flood defences. Well, a flood wall with sections of gating. So you can see this here. There's a gate that they can slot in that then creates flood protection there. And as we go back, there is it, and all the doors over there. When we go back in the river, you can see all along the back there's this white wall, which is about that high. And that is essentially a sealed unit. And so it's that when there is a flood event, they can seal the entire building and shut it off from the water. And they've got at least maybe a metre and a half of protection.
Surely they'll still have to close it.
They would, but then they don't have to have the time of cleaning it because it's the cleaning cost. I think in that year they estimated about £70,000 of damage in terms of cleaning. Now, for a pub, I mean, any guesses at the kind of annual income of a pub like this? You might be getting near millions, probably. This is a relatively busy pub, yeah? So the turnover of this pub, that's only a small proportion. So, Liv, what they did then is the brewery spent £40,000 on these flood defences. So, £40,000, does it sound like a lot of money?
Yeah.
It sort of does, but in terms of flood defences, it's relatively not. What we'll be able to do is compare the cost of this to some of the other schemes when we go further up the stream, and actually this is relatively cheap. And it's been effective for the pub. The pub's been able to continue operating and we can kind of overcome these flood events. Okay. If you just look over there.
Meadow.
Yeah, that is what the river would look like naturally. So this bank that we're stood on would look like that. That's marshy water meadows. They're water meadows, and that's relatively untouched and quite natural. What you can see in the distance though is the motorway, and then also we saw the plane going overhead. So this part of the river has quite an interesting land use. What sorts of things?
Spiders, eels.
Land use.
Fishing.
So there's been some fishing, which is then part of recreation. So we've got recreation. Lots of transport links. So this is a real hub for all the transport links. Is there much residential? Not bordering the river, but there are, if you were to go another kilometre in that direction, there's a lot of housing. Yeah, there is a within close proximity. Okay.
You've got like
something in my hair.
Yeah, but it's like an animal. Where did it go?
The other thing then.
No, it was green. It was bright green.
Well, when we get back in the river, what I want you to start doing is look at the water and then also focus on the far bank. We'll stop and talk about that, but when the Environment Agency guy was in, when Tim was in, what did he say was one of the biggest problems with the river?
It's
it's the sandiness.
Siltation, yeah. Now this stretch, because we are down near the mouth, it's had the longest distance over which the water has flowed, so it's had the longest time to collect up all this material. Now this has some of the highest levels of siltation for the whole river, and if you look you can barely see the bottom, partly because the water is quite murky because of that silt, and then there's also a lot of material in the bottom.
But on the man-made side of this,
Yeah. That was maybe on a bend, and we'll have a look at a bend because we can think about that profile.
Oh, we
We'll
got
talk
it.
about the names. Okay, shall we safely get back in?